I wish people would have more conversations about like dialectics and shit. You know what I mean? That'd be cool. All right. All right. I will go back one. Our resistance proceeds under various forms, comrades. First of all, and at the end of the day, political resistance. This is why we began by creating a party, a political instrument. But there are also other types of resistance that are fundamental elements of our struggle, comrades. Economic resistance, cultural resistance, and armed resistance. There exist at least these types of resistance, and we have to develop them more every day. Our struggle has been the development of these, even if we haven't been conscious of the fact. This is what the struggle has been, comrades. Hold on a second, I got something like a dot on my glasses bugging me. Dang dots. For this reason, and from the very beginning, our party program clearly defines that the objectives were that we had in view: fighting, taking up arms, and going on strikes are too easy, but fighting with arms in one's hand isn't enough. It is necessary to struggle with political consciousness in one's head. It is necessary that we beware that it's the consciousness of man that guides the gun, and not the gun that guides his consciousness. The gun counts because the man is behind it, grasping it, and it's worth more and more the consciousness of man is worth. The more the man's consciousness serves a well-defined, clear, and just cause. We have to clearly define our political consciousness because the enemy exerts political pressures in order to destroy our political resistance, as much inside as outside our hand. We have clearly defined our political resistance that we should do. There is a lot we need to define. Whoever doesn't know that if they do not know, it's because it didn't concern them in the know and to concern them to know it well. The first condition for political resistance, comrades, is to unite people. We already talk about that with the issues of party principles, and our political resistance was already in large part defined to unite, to create national consciousness little by little, because we departed from the point in which we didn't have a national consciousness, in which we were divided into groups, as much by our history as by the work of the Tugas, civilized and indigenous people of the forest, Balantes, the Pebisis, the Manjokos, the Mandingas, etc. Our first task is to create a national consciousness, the ideal of national unity in a certain number of our people, as much as Guinea has in Cape Verde. For this very reason, our party has clear national unity in Cape Verde. In order that we serve the unite all people, we should seek the most that we can. But as I already told you, we must unite without opportunism, negating opportunism, because our resistance isn't resistance in the service of a clique or for making new bosses. It is not the resistance of Cabral who wants others to serve him. If I had wanted in 1960s, when I was head of all the movements of Dakar, I could have united all of them behind me. Likewise with our comrades, Luis Cabral, when he left and arrived in Senegal, they united and posed a problem to him. Leave the PAIGC work with us and become our boss. He responded saying that they shouldn't have told him that because he was with the PAIGC. Since that day, they were his enemies. Even individuals that hung out at his house before then became his enemies. He didn't expect opportunism, comrades. National unity, yes, but against all traitors, against all opportunists, against everyone immoral. We cannot forge national unity with living thieves, with criminals. We make national unity with a sure objective: to combat the enemy, to struggle against the enemy, but also at the same time to struggle against all the negative factors in our midst. This is a fundamental aspect of our political resistance that the comrades need to understand in its depth, to be able to orient their work, rather as militants or as leaders. We need to remain vigilant in order that we not permit anyone to divide our people. As I told you, we have to clearly define what a, quote, people is in the current phases of our history. And I repeat, to the people and to every child in our land of Guinea and Cape Verde who wants to run with the Portuguese colonialists no more. He wants to do this, but he is of our people, and we don't want anyone to divide our people. Vigilance, because the one who divides our people is worse than the Tegu enemy, who will currently go away. In our political resistance, we need to constantly elevate the consciousness of every militant engaged in the struggle, or in the party. We need to demand of each a surmounting of his own work and thoughts. Only thus can be cultivated every value of our land, or what is of most worth, men and women. We have to struggle to apply the principles that we establish and about which we are talking here, in order that everyone may have the possibility of advancing, whether men or women. Whoever refuses this is betraying this and sabotaging our political resistance. And we have to organize again and again. That's why our party began organizing itself immediately. It first clandestinely in groups of 3, in cells, in cities, and afterwards in small groups in the forest, where it was possible to be clear-headed and necessary to stay hidden. Afterward, villages were organized, and we advanced little by little, forming party committees, zone committees, regional committees, and interregional committees. Sounds like they're developing a political government. Little by little, we transform our party administration, organizing it better at every turn, in accordance with the reality of our struggle, in order to improve our political resistance. And every day, every hour, we seek to make clear the, quote, why of our struggle, and what it is we want, so that everyone advances, knowing full and well that what we're doing and for what reason we're doing it. That is that's the necessary ground for us to be able to politically resist and maneuvers of propaganda of the enemy, and for us to be able to make advances in our political resistance, which is the fundamental resistance, comrades, in the context of our general resistance. We already discussed many times that every day we must instruct the masses of our land, tell them the truth above all, and never tell lies or deceive anyone. We have no need to deceive anyone, and we're running our political resistance to the degree that we trick and lie. If there are difficulties, say it clearly. If we're winning, say it clearly. If we're losing, say it clearly, because in every struggle there are not only victories, and there were only victories, no struggles would exist anywhere. There are victories and defeats, helpless difficulties at times, but we keep moving forward. We have to search to instruct the masses of our land, clearly showing them the intentions of the enemy and not allowing the enemy to delude them. This is a fundamental task for us, comrades, and unfortunately, some comrades have forgotten it. In the context of our struggles, concrete situations, in the context of realization of national unity in Guinea, we should make more of an effort to win over our brothers, who some leaders turn from our struggle above all between the Falas and between the few Manjokos. For these reasons, our party established the entire politics and distinguished between the population and its leaders. Treat the population well. Take the high road, and don't do them harm. For this very reason, when we began the struggle in Gabu at the outset of 1965, we gave orders to our command during 1 month to not so much as hit the people of our land who deluded by the Telgas, Tugas, has taken up arms against us. We spoke, we discussed, and a few comrades would even die without dealing with a single blow. Comrade Lecoy could speak. All this to win over others and to reinforce our political resistance, to improve our unity in the context of our actions. In Cape Verde, well, we know that our struggle exists fundamentally to serve those who are suffering, who don't have land to cultivate, who don't have jobs, and are contracted to die in Sao Tomes. What other struggles is for those mothers who haul sacks on the piers in Sao Vincenzi, can't say it, who die of hunger besides their children is in times of crises. While we know all of that, we give orders to get the maximum number of people for our struggle, even those who are on the side of the Tagus, to the well-employed children of Cape Verde, living well. We state clearly, quote, the land is ours, join us so we can advance, end quote. We do this because the first step of political resistance is to join together the maximum number of people possible for the struggle. It's the same thing as Guinea. Our struggle in Guinea isn't for me, for a material point of view. It consists in improving life. If sometimes in my life to have again in our land, in Guinea and Cape Verde, the life that had before. And even if the directors of our land tomorrow in Guinea and Cape Verde live as well as I lived in Portugal, this will mean that our country is very rich. We should be vigilant to not allow our directors to live like that, because it is a extravagant life for a country that still has much work to do. In the first place, our struggle is for our people of the forest, people who lived for centuries and centuries in a village without knowledge beyond 5 kilometers in their houses, people who did not know what a school is or what medication can cure the illnesses that fill the body. Our resistance in Guinea consists in ending all abuse, as much in the forest as in the cities. We must end abuse so that the children of our land will know their professions as it should be, and so that no foreigner direct our land. Yet, knowing this, or despite this, we seek to join everyone with us, people of all social categories. Even today, I tell you, as I told Jamin Pentobol, to leave the Tagus and come with us, as well as the relations to Cape Verde. I clearly told Julio Montenegro, Aguinaldo Vega, Altero Barros, and many others to abandon the Tagas and to take off with us, since the land is theirs too. We're not the only ones who have the rights or the duty to fight for our land. Our land comes to all of us. This is the path of political resistance for those who actually want to struggle or strive to serve these people and not to serve their stomach. In context of our land's political resistance, we should do everything so that our land's forces are actualized. For political resistance, our party does a lot. Maybe it could or should do more, but it has done much. And our struggles, victories, successes continuity and contemporary perspectives show us that our party achieved great victories in this sense. All the while there are traders in our land. There are still people who come from the Tagos, dogs of the Tagos in our land. And there are even still people among us who will head to the Tagos side tomorrow because their ambitions, delusions, vanities, and vices don't permit them to endure the exigencies and rigors of our party's work. Political resistance also has to be great in the exterior spheres as well. In our conditions, the principal objective in the exterior spheres is to garner the political support of everyone in order to reinforce our political resistance. Our party worked and fought a lot to garner that political support is much in Africa as in the world. Since 1960s, we of Guinea and Cape Verde have been lucky because I myself was appointed to begin denouncing Portuguese colonialism in the world by the votes of all the comrades of the Portuguese colonies who were with us. And it was in February 1960s that we held the first press conference of the international sphere in London, unmasking Portuguese colonialism. Here we, one of the Portuguese colonies' descendants, wrote the first pamphlet against Portuguese colonialism. It was published in English in Britain under the name Abel's Digesia. There, in the international and exterior spheres, our political resistance began to take form, still with the context of the Portuguese colonies, but slowly marched towards the context of Guinea and Cape Verde, that is, towards our party context. The principal objective and political resistance in the exterior sphere is to win over allies, to win political support, and to politically isolate the enemy. That is why 1960s onward, while we prepared our people for armed struggle, we began frequenting international and meetings, setting out the problems, fighting to be heard, multiplying our actions, seeking all the necessary support, and wanting to isolate the enemy in the world. Another problem is how to isolate the enemy itself in relations to its people. Thus, since the beginning, in the context of our political resistance, we have remained clear that we don't struggle against the Portuguese people. Everyone in our party knows that. We do not struggle against Portuguese or the Portuguese people. We struggle against Portuguese colonialism, against the Portuguese colonialists. We are fighting to clear out the Portuguese colonialists from our land. Yet we were even clearer. We in Guinea and Cape Verde, PAIGC, don't struggle against the Salazarism or fascism in Portugal. That's the work of the Portuguese, not ours. That's the important point in order to isolate the Tagus from their own people. Within Guinea, we have been able to isolate them a little. We saw that in the beginning of 1959, with the August strikes of 1959 and the Pedagati massacre. That's a hard word to say, and I didn't even say it right at all. Some civilians took up arms against us, even though in the war Portuguese civilians didn't want to take up arms. Various civilians came over to our side. It is a great success of our party, and they know fully well that they are not against them. This is what it means to isolate the enemy from his own people, from his own folk. In Portugal today, day by day, favorable opinions of the PAIGC is constantly on the rise, comrades. You cannot even imagine the great respect for our party in Portugal. There is more respect for our party from some Tagus in Portugal than maybe from some of you seated here. You'll forgive me, but it is true. And everyday opinion against the colonial war in our land resurges more because our party has been able to work on that aspect of political resistance, and that consistence of isolating the enemy, distinguishing it from its people, and isolating in the relations of its people. It could be better, but the time hasn't arrived for everything to be very well. We defend our position in relations to the Portuguese people. We define the way to treat prisoners of war and to treat deserters in order to constantly win over the Portuguese people, cutting them off from our enemies, who are the Portuguese colonialists. And today, we know that the best propaganda already accomplished by our party, by our struggles, by our resistance, was accomplished by the Portuguese deserters, even by the Portuguese prisoners. This is one of the great victories of our struggle. There were even Portuguese deserters who, after we sent them away, wrote to us, asked about the acceptance of naturalized children in our land because they wanted to live working for the PAIGC. That shows us how much success we had in such work. From the beginning of our struggle, even with the documents that the comrades may recognize, we addressed ourselves to the colonialists of our land, telling them clearly, you are the wheel of the old colonialist car that wants to continue exploiting our people. Even they have a place in our land if they want. We want to make a land where anyone from whatever part of the world can live, work, and live properly, provided that they respect the right of our people to direct itself. That was the first reason that demobilized many Tagu civilians and colonialists to deny the colonialist path. And there was a point around 1964, if the authorities would admit it, that they were all gone. But in the context of our struggle, while armed in the order to respect the correct form of our political consciousness, we refuse every sort of abuse against the Portuguese soldiers. If one of our comrades one time committed crimes, like those committed by the Tagus against us, he didn't obey the party's orders. In the beginning of our struggle, there were comrades who, in our resistance, generally typed a framework, suggested committing certain atrocities, but we refuse that. In our struggle, there aren't those things that occur elsewhere in Africa. Whatever the Africans' reason might be, killing women, killing white children, or because they're white, we refuse that now and always. Why? Because we want to forge a political resistance to serve our people. We don't want our people to be bloodthirsty. We don't want our people to spill blood for the sake of spilling blood. Blood will be spilt, but in the political action that serves our land's future. Anyone we kill has killed because he has taken up arms against us, against the right of our people. We give the orders that anyone who took up arms but has deserted will no longer be considered an enemy. He is a human being who should be treated well. Fortunately, our comrades have known to respect this, and it shows to be. And if one or another doesn't respect this, he is sabotaging our party's work, our political resistance. In the context of our political resistance, our work with other peoples and other Portuguese colonies is very important. We already told you that of the movements of the Portuguese colonies, none tends to this as much as our party. From the outset, we always laid out this problem. We're only one, and we struggle together because the enemy is only one. There were highs and lows in other movements in relations to our conjuncture. There were betrayals in other movements, but the PAIGC was always loyal to the unconditional solidarity with other movements of the Portuguese colonies, comrades. But there were still comrades in our party who posed the problem to us. But why should we support CONCP, the Conference of Nationalist Organization, of the Portuguese colonies alone. We responded that we support it because it was in our interest. It wasn't only the interest of others, but ours as well. It was necessary to sacrifice cadre to work for the CONCP, since others provided no one. In a similar vein, against everyone and everything, we defended the necessities of adjoining all the students of the Portuguese colonies in the organizations UGEAN, the General Union of Students of Black Africa. Fortunately, our disciplined comrades understood this well. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it, and reposting. We only refused one thing. We don't join ourselves to false movements in the Portuguese colonies. We don't join ourselves to movements that don't advance and that deliver themselves to the imperialists, because we don't want a new type of domination in our land. We unite with those who, in our analysis, show us that they're pure and having the intention to struggle properly. And still today, we don't regret this position. That comrades is one of the essential elements of our political resistance. Our unity, our comradeship, our collaboration, and our intimate linkage with the liberation movements of Angola, Mozambique, and Sao Tome. Collaboration with who? That's my question. We ourselves, as the PAIGC, work a lot for the unity of the movement of Mozambique, for the creation of the FRELIMO, the Mozambique Liberation Front. But we of the PAGC helped to form the MPLA, the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola. In Angola too, there is no sort of vanity in this, and this is even politically known. Those of Angola know it. In order to serve the interests of our people, comrades, we run risk in Angola and in clandestine meetings. At the moment, the various Angolians were already prisoners in the PIDE, the International and State Defense Police. It was necessary to go to Angola and assemble together. We arranged contracts as ergonomists, I can't say it. Even if I heard it, I couldn't say it right. Went to Angola and took the opportunity to meet comrades and to discuss with them a new path that we should all follow in the struggle for our lands under the control of the PIDE. Comrades, we did all this after other tasks that we had already accomplished in Angola. For what? To serve the people of Guinea and Cape Verde. Comrades, we are not delusional enough to serve the Angolan people, although from our human consciousness, we would do as much as we could to serve in Angola and Mozambique as in Guinea and Cape Verde. And the only truly conscientious members of our party is the one capable of serving in any land, combating the same enemy. We always define with the utmost force the necessity of the union between us, between the movements of the Portuguese colonies, and unfortunately, they're all of the difficulties, all of the problems today. We're all in agreement, and that's very important. One more large victory against Portuguese colonialism, comrades. And together, we prepare ourselves to realize that dream of our party, which is to put all of the students of the Portuguese colonies into one organization. That would be another great victory in the plan of our political resistance, because the enemies of our people of today or tomorrow are also among our students, looking to conquer them in order to confine the life of our people. In the context of our political resistance outside of the land, we shall constantly reinforce and develop our relations with Africa. In the first place, we struggle with a great deal of courage in the conquering, for example, to win over the friendship and esteem and the solidarity of the Republic of Guinea. That was the fundamental aspect of our political resistance, comrades. And that achievement in that phase of our struggle was probably the best, most transcendent victory of our party, which means that it had the most consequences, even beyond that most can imagine. We dug deep and had patience, determination, and persistence in winning over the people of Senegal. Despite all the Senegal's resistance, disavowed the creation and of movements against our party. And after so many years of work, we arrived at an agreement with the governor of Senegal. This is a great victory in the context of our political resistance, and one that we have to reinforce more each day. But we're already at a different level because today the situation is different. I've sought in the African context, giving our possibilities, of course, and insofar as we have time of our and our circumstances allow to reinforce friendship with other independent African states. We have won over a profound friendship with a few African heads of state for our party. We cannot forget the profound friendship that connected us to Algeria, the United Arab Republic, Tanzania, and Congo Brazzaville, to cite a few. We want to develop friendship with the Ivory Coast and Tunisia, Tunisia. And like parties is still dedicated to advancing more in this area with all the independent African states, which is an important task for our political resistance. We have managed through our valor, our work, the task and victories of our resistance to win over all the peoples of Africa in the context of the OUA, the Organization of African Unity, and to assert themselves, which is to say our party, our people, is a primary movement of African liberation. This constitutes a victory, a great victory in the political arena, comrades, in regards to our plan for political resistance. And we always work to reinforce our friendship and our collaboration with other African liberation movements. Okay, so they're just collaborating with other African liberation movements. Good. We have great unity and confidence in the movement of South Africa, which struggles against colonialist racism. Let's not forget the movements in Rhodesia of Southwest Africa, and before they were independent of Zambia and Kenya. I worked persistently to collaborate with them, always consciously avoiding knowing how to choose with whom we should form friendships, because whoever does not know how to choose friends correctly on the basis of a criterion that one respects chooses partners in crime, not friends. In our party, one of the most significant victories of our political resistance through intense labor in many years was to demonstrate the values of our struggle to the progressive forces of the entire world, principally the socialist community. We showed them the values of our labor and the seriousness of our party, while we were winning over their trust, their consideration, and even more, their admiration. The point was, from our political consciousness and the victories of our political resistance, and gained their assistance in our struggle. Similarly, our party has known how to forge political resistance against Portugal's allied countries. We've never gone out to the outside world, deluded that we were fighting against every capitalist country. We've never done that. We have combated Portuguese colonialism, and that is our task. We posed the problem clearly as much to the Americans as to the Germans, French, the English and French. And of course, engagement, fuck off. We told them that we were not fighting against them, but because against Portuguese colonialism. And if they don't join us, or if they don't obtain anything from them, it is not our party's fault. The fault lies within them, because due to their imperialist interests, they have their commitments to the Portuguese colonialists, and these interests carry more weight than the human interests they could have for our struggle. we've achieved victories all the same. We have already seen that Western countries sometimes abstain from voting either in favor or against Portugal. That is already a great victory for us, comrades. A great victory. For example, we get to go to some countries and to conduct press conferences and to pose our problems. And we obtain, above all, the support of all of these countries, anti-colonial forces. That is important, comrades. As much in America as in England, Italy, and France, etc., the true progressive force have a great admiration for the PAIGC, comrades. Only those who know nothing of our relations or of all the correspondence we conceive don't know that. But ultimately, we obtain a great victory. A Western country that had dealt with Portugal in the commercial context had put itself entirely on our side. Sweden, and today Sweden forcibly assists us. This year we are going to begin to receive that assistance not in money, but in goods, medicines, and school supplies. And this will help our people in the economic and cultural spheres. Comrades, this is a great victory for us and the opening of a great rapture of Portuguese alliances. Colonialist Portugal is quite aware of this and became furious. Soviet Union assisted us, but Portugal did not become as furious in this case. Portugal protested, but not much, because they knew it couldn't be otherwise. The same happened in China and in Cuba. Portugal knows that we received arms and other things from Cuba. It knows it knows that there are Cuban doctors who help us. It knows all that quite well. It isn't the time to capture a Cuban, and they know that. But Portugal didn't make the same commotion. It didn't become as ferocious as happened with Sweden. Just when Sweden said it would help us, the Tagus immediately became ferocious, called their ambassador, cut commercial relations, put people in the streets to demonstrate, and prohibited workers from unloading Swedish boats. Portugal did this because it knows the force that this alliance presents for us. They know that it is a rupture in their Western alliances. They know that this can serve as an example for progressive forces. For example, from America, England, and France, that these forces can rise up and decide to ask their rulers to assist the African liberation movement. I don't know. In this time, the only way to get that is to overthrow the U.S., because we know the U.S.'s behaviors when it comes to these. They have feared of the precedent, comrades, that could give you an idea of great victory that our party realized this year in the work of our political resistance and in the international sphere. In sum, comrades, our political resistance should orient itself around three fundamental points. 1, to realize national unity in our land and to place it entirely in the service of the struggle, in the service of our people under the party's flag. 2, to isolate the enemy from all its allies, from all its collaborators, from all those who offer some support against our struggle, without foregoing our principles. And 3, to orient our struggles in such a way to work so well that we should never forget that our struggle is fundamentally political and that we must assure the victory of our political resistance. And that's the end of that chapter. Chapter 4, economic resistance. So we're going over the different resistance. We did political, now we're doing economic, I think. In our afternoon sessions yesterday, we consider our resistance as a response to Portuguese colonial domination in Guinea and Cape Verde. We also demonstrated to the comrades that what this consisted of, what are the principal aspects of our resistance, and how from the beginning of our struggle until today, we have followed a straight line in response to the necessity of resistance in accordance with our land's concrete situation. Yesterday, we spoke about political resistance, and we saw that beyond this, there are economic, cultural, and armed resistance. Each of these resistance exists and has continued to advance more each day since we began our struggle. even if many of our comrades aren't aware of this. Today we are going to talk a bit about another important aspect of resistance, which is economic resistance. As you, comrades, know, our struggle is political struggle because we seek to conquer the right of our people, who should be free, sovereign, which means in self-directing, conquering our lands, national independence. But on the basis of this truth, there is a following truth. Colonialism is primarily an economic domination. Colonialism or imperialism domination in the first place seeks to dominate other people economically. To this end, it redoubles political domination and prolongs the forces of the imperialist or colonial states in our land, which it wants to dominate economically. For this very reason, we should say that the first objective of our resistance and struggle at bottom is to liberate our land economically. Although beforehand, we have to pass through political liberation. Jesus Christ, visibility. I hate that. Haha. Okay. All right. This means that the land is only truly liberated if it is managed to throw off foreign domination of a country's economy. If we in fact manage to liberate the economy of our country from all foreign exploitation, this is liberation of the land dominated by colonialists. This means that every land has its natural resources and its population, which is a land's greatest richness. The population, to the extent that it develops its capacity for labor, for production of its already real or potential natural riches, and for the means of production, all of this is subordinate to the imperialist domination. Isn't it free, and doesn't it develop freely in the echo of colonial imperial domination? To actually win independence consists in being able to freely develop that set of things called the, quote, productive forces of the land. Therefore, you see that at bottom, our resistance functions to resolve the economic problems, although it has to pass through politics, and politics is always very important. This is the great importance of our economic resistance. As I told you before, every struggle and principally our struggles for liberation has two aspects that should always be held together: destruction and construction. We saw this clearly in the political resistance. We have to destroy the Portuguese state. We have to destroy the political ideas that the colonialist tagus put on our people's heads. And we have to destroy or surpass, furthermore, the political misconceptions that might exist in our heads of our people, our population, the classes and ethnic groups of our land, since these misconceptions can be harmful to our people's advance along the path of progress. We need to construct a new state. Ooh, I don't agree with that part. I don't agree with that part. I don't agree with states. That's okay. We need to construct a new state in our land based on our people's freedom and on democracy and on work for progress. We have to construct our people's national consciousness, constantly developing our population political consciousness. We have to construct all the political means, political systems necessary, political organizations in order to defend the conquest of our national liberation. Economic resistance also involves destruction and construction. Our objectivity in economic resistance is to destroy the exploitation of our people by the Portuguese colonialists. This means that from the outset of our struggle had to be guided down the path of completely stopping the Portuguese colonial regime exploitation in our land. We know that exploitation in our land operates principally through the almost forced acquisition of the agricultural products from our people in Guinea and through the prices established by dealers of the colonial state. Through the obligation to cultivate peanuts in our land, which are brought out at an established price by the Tagus, who exploit our people. Consider in conjunction with serious economic calculations regarding the cultivations of peanut, we arrive at the conclusion that this is forced labor. We arrive at this conclusion because our family that cultivates however many acres of peanuts, what is gathered and sells, and the money received at the end of the day do not suffice to pay a salary. Even less can this support the people of a family during the work year. In other words, we reach the conclusion, for example, that our people work for free for the Casa Govia, Casa Ultramarina, and other traders that buy peanuts because it is certain that the money earned by means of peanuts is used to pay the family tax, to get some fabric for one's wife, or to buy something else small. But if one did the math correctly, we see that in agricultural exploitation, this money earned does not pay the price for those peanuts cost, including salaries and other relevant expenses. Well, this is what we want to destroy. We had to destroy this. We had to destroy those exploitative economic relations of the colonialists over our people. And we also have had to destroy other bases of economic exploitation, despite having taken on the administrative error. For example, the payment of unjust duties and various types of taxes on our people by the Portuguese colonial state. Boiled peanuts. Our objective in Cape Verde is primarily to destroy the exploitation of our people by the regimes of great estates that don't give land to our people. Our people have to be tenants, whether they produce or not. They have to pay rent, living in misery, submitted to hunger, and even subjected to being sold or contracted as forced laborers for our colonies. We should destroy this. We have already been able to destroy much in Guinea. Oops. Where was I at? And there are still days, for example, such as those when Guinea-Bissau announced that a Greek ship with 3,000 tons of rice arrived in our port. So we already see in this a bit of the colonial regime destruction, because as we know, our people were practically forced to sell the rice they produced to Marina, to then be shucked and sold to the population. But now the Tagus have to import rice. In the last years, they imported more than 10,000 tons of rice to Brazil alone. And this year, they have already received 3,000 tons. And whoever follows the official statistics will see that the exploitation of peanuts fell greatly. There is practically no exploitation in our land today. Wait, there is practically no expropriation in our land today. Ships come with war materials, with provisions for troops, or with goods for the cities, and returns almost empty. They return principally with truck scraps or other materials that our combatants destroyed. We have already in large part destroyed, and we have to completely destroy the entire colonial Portuguese economic system in our land in order to construct what? We know we now have to begin to construct our own economy. And for some years here, we have begun to struggle very well in political and military spheres. But a people cannot struggle seriously without situating stomachs, and good health. Hold on, I'm gonna look up this word. I don't understand why it would be situated stomachs. Let me make sure. Hey, Red, if you're still here. Probably not. How many people come? SATIATED. Satiated. To completely satisfied, fulfilled, or supplied with something, usually food, desire, or pleasure, to the point where no more is wanted. Satiated stomachs and good health. That's also a form of resistance. To actually resist without food or health is not possible. For that reason, we have to develop our economy to see the best way to make our economy advance even during the struggles, and to guarantee the minimal conditions so that we can guarantee the means of existence for our people and our combatants. In a Leninist position, that sounds like dual power, creating dual power, your economies, the party, and we have to pull together to improve the conditions of our people little by little, so that they feel that it's a fact worthwhile to sacrifice itself on oneself in the struggle of our land's independence under our party flag. To the extent that our party will be capable without us militants, leaders, combatants, and directors to better our land's condition of existence little by little, to demonstrate clearly that misery can end, to convince everyone in his or her consciousness that if today there is misery, tomorrow it will end, and that this depends on our own labor, then we will be advancing in our struggle. This is because that one who trusts today, although he has nothing, if he labors well, tomorrow will have something. This person isn't wretched, but already rich because he trusts and knows that the path is open. We have to do this most of all because we know that everyone who is in a miserable situation is easy prey and is easily caught up by the enemy against the interests of our people. It is enough for us to remember, for example, to make a ratio between the following, which people in our land serve the Tagas most. Most people who have means, who have means of those who don't have means. Where are their most servants in Tagas? We see that it's among those who have had lesser means that there are more servants of the Tagus. Even in Basau, we see that the Tagus, TUGAS, recruited many of their agents for the PIDE, international and state defense policy, from among the unemployed and idlers, etc. Facing with the necessity of our economic resistance, we have to pose a question clearly. What does our enemy do to destroy our economic resistance? Our enemy isn't fighting against us only with weapons, but also fighting against us economically. On the one hand, in the sites where it still commands, the enemy struggles greatly for economic development, saying that life will improve, giving employment to people to see if life will actually improve, looking for balanhanas, BOLANHAS, to cultivate managing goods, etc. For example, everyone knows that in Cape Verde, more merchandises and good things are arriving. They're now than ever. They're now more than yeah. This is to avoid that continuous shortage that usually exists from nourishing revolts. Likewise, in Guinea, today, various things that Togas bought from us before, for example, rice, they now buy for significantly increased prices. This is in order to liquidate our economic resistance. The colonialists spread propaganda that they are providing large balahans in the area, and tight, the islands of Basau, that is almost entirely transformed into this bolanhas, and are thus seeking the best way to economically elevate and manage the managed region. They do so to ensure to ensure the people that life is improving and that it is not necessary for them to unite with those who are struggling. On the other hand, the Tagus makes an effort to completely destroy the economy that serves as the basis of our struggle. Bombings, napalm assaults with helicopters, and terrorize our population, so that our population even abandons our country, or Senegal, or the Republic of Guinea. For the Tagus, this is all the better, because then the population doesn't work in our liberated areas, which would give us those necessary means to bear the struggle. But if that doesn't, thank you for approving me. But if that doesn't come to pass, if the population hides itself, not attempting what it wants, then they burn our crops and our villages, destroy everything, kill our cows, or whichever animal gets in their way, and they'll kill you, and as the criminals that they are, they kill our population, children and women and elderly, and countless able-bodied men. All that isn't only for the sake of war, but to destroy, to finish off the economic resistance, because the Tagus know, as do we, that if we didn't have an economy, if we didn't have economic means within our land to sustain the struggle, if we did not have food or possibilities of acquiring food for our people and our combatants, then there couldn't be a war. There couldn't be a struggle. There couldn't be a struggle, comrades. The enemy, therefore, does all that it can. And even in regard to the medication of other woven things that we get from our people, for our people's dispensaries, depositories, for the hospitals, etc., the enemy makes an effort to finish off and destroy this. One of the enemy's greatest losses in the economic sphere consists in the fact that we have been able to install people's depositories in a few areas, bringing fabric, shoes, and other things that our people need. The Tagus desire to discover this in order to burn it as quickly as possible. This is because we know that it's an economic force of ours, and that it always appears as a new political force in the context of our struggle. In order to avoid our economic resistance, the Tagus are eager to burn our land completely, if necessary, to deploy scorching earth policies, to reduce everything to ashes, only in order that we not succeed in our struggle. Therefore, we have to be vigilant in this regard. We have to know full and well that we should do in the face of the Tagus' criminal intentions, which have been demonstrated in a few areas of our land. Our economic struggles must be serious. That is why, since the outset of our party, has considered and sought to construct a program for our economic resistance. Of course, we have to adapt it to our conditions in the best way, and we should mobilize all our forces for our economic resistance, especially the forces of our population and of our militant and in villages and in our liberated areas. At the same time, we should continually reinforce the destruction of our enemies' colonial economy, while also making assurance plans to increase our production as much as in agriculture as in handcrafts. We should seek to destroy the economic means of the enemy, their cars, factories, storehouses, depositories, ships, and roads, in order to completely cut off their economic exploitation of our land. You comrades saw that we had begun to sabotage. We began with the sabotage of roads, bridges, and many other things. That was the first act of economic resistance, which is also political and military. We mobilize against the colonial enemies, and in a given area, if the enemy had settled down in such a way that only if we burn everything could we make the enemy leave. We have the right to do so because the land is ours. It's preferably to completely burn an area, to throw out the Tagus, and afterward to work to construct it, than to not deal with them. The Tagus remaining there internally, dominating our people. We have to be aware of this, although in our struggle we have to establish tactics in such a way that we should be able to reduce the need to destroy things to a minimum, since even under colonial domination, it was our people who made such things. What that, by the way, has been the policy of our party. We shouldn't comprehend in the work of our party a great need to destroy all of the Tago's means of supplying provisions. That's why we insist so much on attacking on ships on the river and trucks on the road, because ships and trucks furnish the war. But they also serve the enemy's economy. To the extent that we attack ships and trucks, we attack the enemy as much from the military point of view as and this is very important, from the economic point of view. Hey, Brianna. We should do as much as possible in our land, in our struggle, as we have tried to do. But we should grow stronger every day to elevate our economy, even in war. We should elevate it to improve our living conditions in our land. And we should make the greatest possible efforts to that every day we can depend less on things that come from outside our land. That is to say, in order to look for ways to be self-reliant. Our party gave important watchwords in order to develop our agriculture, to improve our production, to increase our agricultural production, to make other things like handcrafts, works, even to make more soaps in our land, and to seek to develop all the home bases, industries of our population. Of all this, it is the watchword of our party. For what? To see if we're self-sufficient. Clearly, our lands has special conditions. Unfortunately, with greatly limits and possibilities of our labor in this field, our land has been very behind economically, so behind that we have had a fair amount of successes in being able to aptly apply these fundamental principles of our economic resistance. But this is no reason not to do the most we can. We can't pretend to, for example, to rely entirely on woven materials that our people have been accustomed to buy. Shoes, necklaces, let's say needles, sewing machines, etc. Or those things that form part of our people's everyday needs, created from all of this time of colonialism. We can't rely on these things alone because they aren't factories in our land to produce such things. There are many agricultural cultures that never made such things, and we cannot rapidly make them in the midst of this war either. But we should be capable of beginning to make a few of them. We can't pretend to be self-sufficient in medical matters, not even simply medicine. But there are, in fact, things that we can do. For example, increase the production of rice, increase the production of manioc, potatoes, and other foods, and guarantee production of all of our land's area that we control. We must greatly increase production that we can do. And given our conditions of struggle, it is fundamental basis for our economic resistance. We should also have already mentioned to you, see to develop our handcrafts, jars, mats, clothes, bands, etc. Our party has worked a bit in this area, but it hasn't accomplished what it wanted. This is because of the thick of war, and with our land's conditions, some party leaders forget the relevant watchwords to develop and increase production, to multiply diversity and vary our land's agriculture production. Of course, we have achieved some successes. There are areas in which more mosaic was produced that before more potatoes than before. But we must recognize that this is far from being what it could be. If it's true that in some areas, such as Quanara, for example, former population didn't cultivate anything, but today do so. It's also true that today, other areas in which the population cultivated less due to the war. The flight of a greater number of our land's people for Senegal is, and continues to be a large blow to our economic resistance. It's a great blow to our economic resistance because all of those people aren't arms capable of working in a condition of our liberated regions. And now they're going to work in Senegal, increasing Senegal's economy and diminishing our economy and economic resistance confronted by the Portuguese colonialists. We should say clearly that at all levels, some of the directors and leaders of the party haven't put enough emphasis on our economic resistance. We always say that it's not only necessary that our people work, that the population work to produce, but that the combatants should also work to produce. We must mobilize our forces during the rain season so that the population works more and so that the combatants and militant men cultivate. This was possible in a few areas, but in other areas, we should recognize that even the combatants who don't have much work to do because the areas are liberated don't cultivate. Just wait for the population to feed them. And we have reached a point in some areas today because of the shortage of rain in the last years, for example, that the population can't provide food. The combatants didn't cultivate anything. And they have to ask the party management to send them food. Hey, Spencer. We should clearly tell our comrades that if we have to nourish our comrades deep in the forest of our land in order to be able to fight against the Portuguese colonialists, then the Portuguese colonialists will remain in our land another 100 years. That would be the result, above all, of the lack of responsibility, comrades, who were incapable of getting the combatants to cultivate at the most necessary time. There are still combatants who don't even help the population as we said that they should. In the context of our economic resistance, we should orient our labor in such a way as to guarantee the war economy in order to secure essential goods and supplies for our struggles fronts, for our combatants, and for our people. Unfortunately, we have great difficulties in obtaining essential goods because even our land's basic conditions in which we destroy bridges and roads, etc. We don't have sufficient money. We don't have cars, nor is it possible to use cars today. And we can't establish a foreign trade that would allow us to buy things with the products that we sell abroad. Because of this, our population supplies the essential goods depends fundamentally on the gifts or donations of our allied friends sends. At the same time, we should, as I told you, each day try to develop more respect for those who work greatly, raising the value of labor, convincing our land's children that working the earth shouldn't be disdained. On the contrary, it is the most pure, healthy, and valuable work in our land today. Unfortunately, many Africans have it in their heads that work doesn't count for much, working the earth only to extract things to eat, even less so because this is the work of the wretched. But in the context of our economic resistance, we must be capable of accomplishing great political works in order to constantly convince our people, our population, and everyone of this, that tilling the earth and cultivating plants isn't only for eating, but so that we can have many products to export, to sell, and to transform in other products. This is the most important deified and elevated work in our lands, comrades, rather in Guinea or Cape Verde. In the context of our economic resistance, we have to be capable. Oh my gosh, another one. Okay. We have to be capable today of even more so tomorrow, of leading every social layer of our land, every ethnic group of Guinea, every race, as we're accustomed to saying, to produce more and to multiply production. We can't allow that an elite group of our land produce only rice. It must produce rice, corn, beans, and peanuts, etc. including vegetables and other things, because it's necessary to improve our people's level of nourishment. Our land's entirely population can produce everything, and we must do this and develop every type of cultivation everywhere in order to improve our people's level of production. Little by little, we have to stimulate, which means to excite or to give courage to those who are most valuable so that they will constantly continue to produce more. We should cultivate our friendships, affections, and dedications so that the children of our land, who we see cultivating our bolahas with enthusiasm and dedication, should have their names raised high, and we should offer them an example to our land's other children. Little by little, we have to establish every way. Oh my gosh, of course I didn't get approved. Little by little, we have to establish every way of resolving the problems of our lands. Smaller farmers tomorrow, because due to economic delays, Guinea doesn't yet truly have small farmers. In Cape Verde, the problem is different, because though there are small farmers, they aren't as many as desired, because the majority are sharecroppers, our partners. The fundamental problem consists in guiding people to labor together in these conditions. In Guinea, little by little, we have to be capable of creating cooperative, increasing in the first place the cooperation between families, and searching tomorrow for the best militants to stick together in a cooperative in order to develop a cooperative system, which as our idea is the shortest path to develop our agriculture, our economy in our land tomorrow. And right now, we should begin with experiments vis-a-vis the colonial state former properties. That's why our party gave orders that those estates or gardens abandoned by the enemy or by those of our land who fled the war should be directed by our own party, by committees named by our party to manage them. We should confess that in the majority of cases, our leaders and comrades didn't attach as much importance to these works or to the party's watchwords as would have been good. In large part, even today, the possible yield to extracted from these gardens and estates isn't extracted, nor are they kept in the proper conditions. Some of them are abandoned, full of straw. The plants disappeared and decomposed. Beyond those that the targets themselves shielded with bombs, destroyed our fruit trees and other things that were there. In the context of our struggle, we have to get the principal aspect of our economy's economic resistance clearly to our heads. As you all already know, in the specific case of our economic resistance, it's agriculture. We have nothing more in our land. It's agriculture today, agriculture tomorrow, and maybe still agriculture later on. Right now, we have to make the greatest efforts to advance with our agriculture, elevating the political consciousness of our farming comrades and our tilling patricians, showing them that the path of agriculture is a primary path for success for our people's immediate advancement. But it is also the path that can open the opportunity of developing industry tomorrow for our people, creating and elevating living situations. But in the first place, and in the midst of our African life, we have to extract the rightful yield from our agriculture, which still today is an agriculture economically behind. Our agriculture is simply one of a subsistence. Everyone produce merely that which is necessary for one's own family. To eat agriculture without a parsimony, without the ability to save for tomorrow, sometimes not even saving enough for the sowing season. And in the colonial context, agriculture is purely for the exchange economy with the Targas, who exploit our people, producing peanuts, gathering coconuts, wax, and honey to exchange with the Targas, or selling rice, and that's all. The money is consumed, and every year our land's children, farmers, are in the same wretched situation at the beginning of the year. They don't advance at all. This is the characteristic of our agriculture. In our land, certain persons said that agriculture was an art of becoming poor, but happily, without a care. In our land, agriculture might be an art of remaining poor for all of one's life, if we didn't in fact change our land's type of agriculture, if we didn't make a true revolution. In our land's economic spheres, which have very good conditions of agriculture, as much in Guinea as in Cape Verde, despite there being periods of drought, or in Cape Verde, there is no reason whatsoever for agricultural disasters in our time, with so many of today's conquests in science, which should be at the disposal of all the world's peoples. Only after advancing well in the fact which with our agriculture can we extract proper yield from our land. We're certain that there are lands of ours that can produce 2, 3, 4, or 10 times what they produce today if techniques were improved, if they selected seeds, if they took care of plants properly, if they worked really well. Many of our lands, if they had compost or fertilizer, and if they joined agriculture with raising cattle, as they should, would then allow us to increase our production in an extraordinary manner. And within the agriculture context, we can do all of this. That is, greatly increase the production of cattle, livestock, poultry, and any breed. This is possible by really working with willpower. If we in fact really dedicate ourselves, and if everyone dedicates herself or himself to labor with willpower, we can't advance in our lands if we raise chickens in the forest and gather them only when it's necessary to eat or to sell them. That is not raising chickens. It's collecting chickens, like those who collect palm nuts or bellows in the forest. We have to really improve all of this in order to be able to think about making our land advance in other spheres. In the industrial sphere, for example, we should put the problem of as concretely as possible in Guinea, as in Cape Verde. Ranching, that is cattle breeding, can be a large and important source of wealth, comrade. In the context of Africa in general, Guinea is a land that has one of the greatest densities of cattle. But Cape Verde, despite its droughts and occasional shortage of rain, still has possibilities today to exporting leather and hides as much as Portugal as to other places. So we're seeing that right now, and we should orient our life along this path. It's exactly from on that side of and for agriculture that we are able to advance and to develop our cattle breeding. Hold on a second. 111. Okay, let me see something here. 1111 1111 1111 111 1111 111. All right, looks like I'm gonna have to find a stopping point. So I'm already at 118, 119, 120. All right, I think this is just the end. Okay. 1111 1111. Sorry, everybody, I'm doing the autism thing. All right, let's go on. Unfortunately, 10 more minutes. Unfortunately, due to this war and during our struggle, we haven't given due attention to this work. We haven't controlled our wealth in cattle. A large part of our wealth in northern livestock fled with the refugees to Senegal, much to the satisfaction of our Senegalese brothers. Others fled to the Kandara region, the Tagus, have eaten our cows in a wild way, even exported our cows. But we as leaders and directors haven't given that sufficient attention. We haven't worked together. We haven't worked together with our population to show them the importance of conserving our wealth in cattle. Fortunately, the local authorities and indigenous colonial soldiers hardly ever ate our small goats or chickens today. But what have we already done to properly sustain our animals, to take care of them appropriately, leading our people to care for and to treat them better? The comrades, political security and wealth commissioners, and leaders never gave a day thought to our general wealth in cattle, with exceptions, of course. For example, there was a case in which one of our leaders wrote to me asking for milk because 2 calves were born and he had no milk to give them. This was in an area of our land where there were newborn calves everywhere. I wrote to him saying that we should look for cows to milk because I wouldn't send him any milk. He said, got it. The comrades aren't disposed to thinking or to seeking resolutions to problems in that context, as in other contexts. Unfortunately, they only want what comes easy. But if we were to labor well, we could have milk at leisure in our land. We could even have cheese or make butter in our liberated areas, because this is no way difficult. Anyone can teach us. Anyone can teach another how to make butter somewhere. In the rainy season, for example, one can't cultivate onions. But now in November, in the dry seasons, any army unit can set up some small plots of cultivating onions or garlic in the corner of their barracks. It's enough to designate to comrades to keep watch near the river in order to properly irrigate as much of the carabols as in the Canjabaria or any other river. Those are all rivers. You can cultivate near a water source in the south of our land, in the Cubesico, or in the Coronera, can't say this in words, or in whichever strip of land. But no one does this because they hope that the party will send what is needed. They forget that we're losing our time, which is important to be able to facilitate the advance of our people, our struggle, and ourselves within the context of satisfying our needs. We should confess that in this sphere, our party hasn't had great victories, except for the fact that in a few areas, the number of bolahans increased and the productions of rice rose is a bit, and a few other things like monoic were further cultivated. There was a certain success of political work and getting certain populations to cultivate a lot. But now we don't have any success in this work because our leaders haven't attached any importance to matters of our economic development to the extent that we can. It is not for working miracles, but insofar as we can really work. We are an agricultural country. You know what? Yeah, we are an agricultural country. We should lead everyone to produce. The population, troops, and even students should produce. We gave orders, for example, for every school to have its field of production. Rarely is there a school that makes its field of production, but the leaders pass by, look, and don't say anything. The directors pass by, look, and don't say anything. And the result is that it's even necessary that we send the boarding school rice to eat. We can ask, quote, what are the children there to learn? What interest is there in seeking to learn how to read if they're not capable of cultivating a little piece of land? We can't let our people fall into the kind of vice We want to learn how to read, to learn everything, but we have to learn to work in order to sustain ourselves, because no one in the world is going to give us food, and a people incapable of producing its food on its own can't have anything else in life. Of course, during wartime, in the time of our struggle, we have to avoid. Okay, wait. I'm gonna stop there. What's going on too? It feels like it's moving. So we're gonna stop here. So we're on the different types of resistance, and this one's the economic resistance and how important it is. It kind of touches base on, like, when I read Mao Zedong in the liberated areas. He too started an economy and also started, what was the other one? I forgot the other one. Liberated areas and stuff. So economy and everything like that. The other one was, oh, I forgot. Add a bookmark. Did I add a bookmark? Bookmark added. 112. This is important because they have to provide for the people to go out and actually do the liberation struggles, you know? So, pretty interesting. Really follows kind of parallel to the fact that Mao's in his time did that, you know, the Civil War and stuff like that, you know? Liberated areas, economic, you know, kind of establishing the dual power nature of things. So, that was very interesting. Anybody have any questions? If no questions, you probably mean decolonization. What did I say? No questions. I don't know what I said. Anyways, yeah, decolonization. All right, everybody. Well, this was fun. Hold on, what was that? No, that's too far up. So he's just going through an extension thing on the economic resistance. That's what he's doing. Ooh, look at that. 122 is where's the last stopping point. And then we're doing cultural resistance next. Yeah. Yeah, so that's good. All right. Well, I hope you all have a good night. Have a good evening. We'll talk to you some other time. Sorry we didn't get you that many coins.